Good afternoon, friends. Welcome to Coffee Break. This is Dr. Michelle Alignay. This afternoon, we'll have a very interesting topic. So please join me. Get your coffee, get your tea, whatever suits your fancy. And let's talk about being vulnerable. A topic na hindi madalas pag-usapan pero tingnan natin how we all need it and it's a very much important part of our relationship. So please join me for the rest of the episode. You may join me here in Facebook. You may share this also to family and friends through YouTube, and tomorrow this will be available via Spotify. So say hi if you are here, and I would like to ask you, how have you been, friends? I know I'm coming in a bit early today, but I just would like to start the ball rolling. I was not feeling well the past week, as you know, and then thankfully, thank God, I'm a bit better. But that does not stop me from coming live to you and having this kind of conversation, because I really, really, really would like us to look into the topic of vulnerability. So there. So I have good friends who are watching. Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Mark. Watching from Dubai. And also my friend Mara from the US is also watching. Thank you. Thank you, Pads. Love the hair. Yeah. Kailangan talaga pag may nararamdaman, nagpapaayos ng hair, di ba? So, I would like to ask you, if you know the topic, if you know the word vulnerable, what comes to your mind when you hear the word vulnerable? Anong naiisip mo? Anong naaalala mo? Ano ang personal definition sa of the word vulnerable? Because I would like us to plunge deep and to have real talk about this. So please put that in the comment section. Let me know what comes to your mind when you hear the word vulnerable. Because our topic is being vulnerable. Is it okay for me to be vulnerable? Is it okay for me na maramdaman 'tong pinagdadaanan na 'to? Yan. Eileen watching from Calgary. Wow. It's so good to have friends and to have people, Pinoys like us, go together and to learn together about family, right? Kasi and I really believe that, and that's a mission that I do. I really believe that no matter where we are in the world, if we are, the Filipino family has just one thread, one common thread. So please join me for the rest of the episode. I would like you to look into this topic. What comes to your mind when you hear the word vulnerable? Nasan ka dito? Um, Somebody said prone. Prone to what? Prone to what, Martina, my love? So, what are you prone to? So, what comes to your mind when you hear vulnerable? Anybody? So, like a teacher, when we say vulnerable, honestly, isn't it mahina? Ayan, weakness. Weakness. It's our limits. It's the limiting factor. So we'll say vulnerable, parang we're susceptible to being sick, we're susceptible to a certain weakness. But let me marupok. Yes, that's another term. I like that. Let's look into that. When we hear vulnerable, ayan, whatever you feel would be the best and appropriate way to really describe it. I would like you to look into the aspect of emotional vulnerability. We hear vulnerable in terms of physical vulnerability, that they're susceptible to sickness, they're susceptible to abuse. But let's go into the topic vulnerability in terms of family, in terms of relationship, in terms of loving relationship, and even, of course, marriage. So, honestly, ang na-condition sa atin, yes, it's weakness. That vulnerable may be a sign of weakness. But do you know that vulnerability is actually a kind of strength? It can be a form of strength. Paano nangyari yun, Doc? Our vulnerability can actually be the form and the way for us to pivot our emotional strength. Ganda, di ba? So here, emotional strength, when um, Joanne Rosenberg in an article in Dr. Joanne Rosenberg in an article in Psychology Today said that emotional strength, when we look at emotional strength as opposed to emotional vulnerability, there's that thing of you're feeling capable, and that you're capable of dealing with an unpleasant feeling. Diba? Emotional strength is just not when a person is can stand up for something. It's that hindi lang yun yung nakayanan mo yung mga problema. Pero, isn't it that you're capable even though, and I think many of us have been through that, even though that we are dealing with people who can be very mean, people who are very uncomfortable to deal with, even if we're dealing a situation that we need to be humble, that we need to be receptive to change, we become capable despite of. Are you with me? So there, that's the first area is that feeling capable. Another emotional strength is also being resourceful. And if one come to think of it, being resourceful, it's that hindi yung di ba sa Pinoy, kinakaya lahat, kinakayanan, ginagawa ng paraan. But come to think of it, being vulnerable is actually being resourceful. Why? Acknowledging needs and asking for help. Yan ang madalas natin na makalimutan kasi sometimes we would always want to put up a good front. Hindi ba? Yung parang ayaw natin na makita ng iba na nahihirapan tayo, kailangan na ng tulong, ayaw pa rin humingi ng tulong. And then that can be very hard, that can be very harsh also sa sarili natin. Look at it. Both aspect of emotional strength, that feeling of being capable and that feeling of being resourceful, they are connected with being vulnerable. Paano nangyari yun? Eh, hindi ba emotional strength nga that you are strong? I would like to invite you to open your eyes, friends, that being vulnerable, it's not a sign of weakness. That can actually harness our personal strength. And why did I say so? Because said by the Dr. Brené Brown. Dr. Brené Brown is a social scientist. You can follow her in Spotify and you can look for her TED Talks in YouTube. She was the one who coined and studied. She's a researcher. She's a social scientist who studied deeply vulnerability. And for her, she defined vulnerability. It has three components. The first one, it's uncertainty. Diba? Kaya ka vulnerable because you're so uncertain about a lot of things. Like us maybe watching now. I know you are watching here because maybe you are threading to uncertain times. Maybe you would like to have answers to your relationship concerns. Maybe this pandemic is hitting you rock bottom. Maybe it's so uncertain on what will happen when we go on a lockdown again for the next few weeks. And there's a lot of uncertainty happening. Are you with me, friends? What is that uncertain thing that's happening to you? And vulnerability has that form of, has sense of uncertainty. Another is that vulnerability entails risk because if we feel that things are uncertain, we take the risk in making a decision. We take the risk in learning if what we know would be able to be magiging successful ba? Pag if I take this bold step, may mangyayari ba? So that's risk. Another one, emotional vulnerability. Ito yung hindi natin madalas makita, friends. There's that sense of emotional exposure. And what do you mean by emotional exposure? When you say emotional exposure, ito yung binubuksan natin yung loob natin sa nararamdaman natin kahit na it's unpopular, even though other people are not comfortable whenever we share about a certain emotion. Like, for example, we're gonna tell our family, I'm having a difficult time already. Or when we tell our family, I'm going through depression, I have mental health concerns, I'm having anxiety attacks, and our families are not used to us having that. That's actually a sign of vulnerability. Why? We are uncertain on how they're going to react. It's a risk to open ourselves, but there is the tone of emotional exposure. Pinapakita natin sa kanila kung ano yung tunay nating nararamdaman. And actually, while we see, many of us have been accustomed that when pag masyado kang weak, pag masyado kang mahina, that is vulnerable. Friends, but I would like you to look, isn't it that showing that you are weak, emotionally exposing yourself to the judgment of people, even your family, isn't it that being strong also? Vulnerability is actually a form of protection and survival, but it can be our greatest emotional strength. And even though it's associated, even though it's connected, even though we perceive it as connected to emotional weakness, it can actually be our emotional strength. Bakit natin sinabi that vulnerability can actually be our emotional strength? Why do you think, friends? Sa mga nanditong nanonood, bakit sa tingin nyo, when we become vulnerable, mas pwede tayong mas maging stronger? We can harness our inner strength when we show our vulnerability. Why do you think so? Can you put that in the comment? Have you ever been vulnerable to someone? To show yourself, to show who you really are, to show what your real state is, to know where you are. Have you ever been like that? I would like to wait for your reactions and comments. Para nandyan pa ba kayo o nakatangan na lang kayo sa akin habang nagdi-discuss dito? um, well, there's such thing as conscious vulnerability. But because when we say conscious vulnerability, we choose to lean on it. We choose to we choose na maging vulnerable. Sometimes we don't automatically become vulnerable because we see uh, conscious vulnerability because we choose to lean to it. Hindi siya automatic nangyayari. Somebody saying here, Mabel, self-awareness is heightened. Yes, actually, vulnerability needs a heightened self-awareness. We get serious about talking about our personal life, and sometimes, diba, with some people, we get serious to talk about their professional life, even our relationships and social risk. We open ourselves to the possibility. When we start opening up to people, we start actually telling about us, and we start also exploring about our weakness. The thing is, when we take that risk in opening up ourselves, we also took the risk on the possibility of being hurt, embarrassed, and helpless. Hindi ba? Pag inamin natin na may pinagdadaanan tayo, pag sinabi natin sa mga malalapit sa atin or sa pamilya natin, of course, we would like to be understood and supported. But it's also opening our doors that possibly we might get hurt, possibly baka hindi nila maintindihan, and possibly we might be embarrassed because they would might think that we are stupid. We might think that hindi niya kaya, she's so weak. And then Je, you're saying, hi Je, being vulnerable is opening ourselves for help. That's true. And if we look at it, how do we see a person who's vulnerable? How saan nagmamanifest ang pagiging vulnerable? One is expressing oneself. Friends, you know what I appreciate about you guys here in Coffee Break is that you are actually also vulnerable to me. Sometimes I see you commenting na yes, pinagdaanan ko yan, or commenting to someone na I feel the same way. And it for me, it's you being vulnerable. I remember one time I discussed the topic of infidelity, and mind you, my God, that's the topic on Ask Doc Michelle. And my God, parang oh, nagulat ako sa level of vulnerability of some of you might have seen that you went through infidelity issue, may pinagdaanan sa asawa, but I am not pinning you down. I'm not embarrassing you because actually ways how do we see if we are vulnerable? We express ourselves in whatever form. Hindi naman natin ginagawa na diary ang social media. We don't lash out or disclose everything, and we don't post everything that we have. But sometimes being vulnerable, it's actually asking for prayers and asking for support. We're expressing it. I'm sick. Last week, I declared to you, I told you I'm not feeling well. I'm really sick. And that's me being vulnerable. You might, the risk there is that you might judge me na parang, oh, baka may COVID si Doc. Thank God, it's negative. Okay, I had my swab test. But oh, kas baka kaya hindi, we can always overanalyze people. But expressing oneself, it's actually a form of showing vulnerability. Another is that we can share our sentiments. Yung bang sentiments na nahihirapan ako, I am going through something. Sometimes I would chat with friends and sometimes pag tinanong nila na ako parang, "Uy, kumusta ka?" I really tell them I'm not okay. Sometimes I don't need to discuss all the details why I'm not okay, but there are moments in our lives that we just need to share our sentiments that, "Can you pray for me because I am not okay?" Can you tell me, friends, right now, are you okay? Ako, I would tell you, I'm not 100% okay because I'm recovering from flu and I'm recovering also because yesterday I had my second shot. Thank God wala na akong flu and it's just a common flu, and then yesterday I had my second dose of the vaccine, and then right now, parang I had a long talk this morning. I had a talk for a school, and I am actually now tired. And sharing my sentiments na parang hindi pala ganun kabilis makarecover from flu. And then that is the one. Also, that's one way that we can show our vulnerabilities, that we can disclose our needs and emotions. Friends, I would like to ask you, is there ever a time when you shared how you really feel, your needs and your feelings to someone, and then you are blessed because they reached out and helped you? Because sometimes we are afraid to open up, but in reality we just might realize that other people are going through the same thing. So can you share there, is there ever a time that you disclose your needs and emotion? And then alam niyo minsan para may mga tao, they try to hide. Ayaw nilang pasabing may sakit sila, ayaw nilang pasabing may pinagdadaanan sila. And I would be respectful on their stance. But sometimes there is a point in our lives that we just choose who the people that we need to disclose to because we need to share the load. And that opening up ourselves, even though it's uncertain, it's taking the risk. We get to be exposed spiritually, we get to be exposed emotionally, but it's disclosing our needs and emotion. It's showing people na, hey, I am not super. Ako, I don't like being called superwoman. I don't like. I don't like being called superwoman because I am more than that. I am not superwoman because I like sharing my vulnerability, and then I really tell I'm not okay right now. I tell people, I tell my family, even my family, I tell them na, and even, I even tell my kids na, guys, mom is not feeling well right now. And then I tell them that, not to harm them, but to alarm them that, hey, I need help. I need extra assistance. I need you to also teach in the house chores. I need you to help me think of the ulam. So it's something that, is share the load, share the burden. I am not burdening my kids by telling them that kasi kayo ganito. No, but I am telling them and disclosing I am not okay. You can support mommy by maybe planning the menu or doing things without being told. And that's something. When we are vulnerable also, we show that we love and we care. Ako dito ako naniniwala. So, meron ako mga na-encounter na parang they hide everything even to their family members na supposed to be the family is supporting them. And the worst thing, it's hiding how you're exactly feeling to your spouse. Yun yung parang, what? Eh, di ba nga yung asawa mo, dapat yun yung tinatawag na katuwang? But whenever we would hide things from our spouse, it's actually limiting that opportunity for us to be vulnerable and to be further connected. Okay? When you're saying that showing our vulnerability means we are open to emotional support or challenges and find ourselves okay with both. Yes, binubuksan mo kasi yung sarili mo. But the thing is, binubuksan mo yung sarili mo sa risk, pero binubuksan mo rin yung sarili mo sa help, sa support, at sa love ng ibang tao. So that is why we are showing our love and care. Being vulnerable is an opportunity for us actually to receive love. and to show our love for other people. Kasi minsan parang we would like them to know na may pinagdadaanan tayo. I care for you, I love you, I'm going through something so that you will not worry about me. I let me tell you, I can handle things. That's being vulnerable. Hindi natin nakikita on that aspect. Kasi minsan, di ba, parang ang nakakasama ng loob na yung may pinagdaanan ka pala na hindi mo sinabi sa amin. May sakit ka pala, at least we could have prayed for you. And if we really love the people around us, I think that, and we are comfortable for us to open ourselves, to be vulnerable to them, we can just tell them that I'm not okay. You can just pray for me. You can support me by praying for me. And I would really appreciate that love and support through prayers. And that's okay. That's okay. Minsan hindi naman tayo naghihingi or naghahanap ng isang bagay, pero gusto lang natin na may suporta at may dasal na makapagduktong sa ating pinagdadaanan. Okay, lastly, how do we show vulnerability? We share our story and we share our state. Have you ever been like, that's why sometimes it's nice to, whenever we attend, for example, for me, I attend the community, the feast, and then we have what we call the couples life group. It's nice to be vulnerable to people you trust because that sign of support from a group is also a way to show each other na, hey, may pinagdadaanan ka, may pinagdadaanan din kami. Maybe it's not directly the same, but it can be a sign that we are both journeyers. We are both going through the same thing. In this journey to midlife, to women like us, really being emotionally vulnerable is really important. I'm gonna tell you because there's always a story to tell. There's always stories that we can share. Minsan ayaw natin ikwento yung story natin kasi nakakahiya. But honestly, there are opportunities, hindi naman natin ikikwento sa lahat, that our story become blessings. Our stories become somebody's salvation. Na parang, ay, na-bless ka dun sa hindi ko magandang naranasan. Or may natutunan ka. Or maybe people were not going to be influencers or inspirer, but somehow sharing the story is sharing the burden, and it's also sharing our faith, sharing how the Lord works in our life, and that is being vulnerable. So when we look at vulnerability, it can become a strength to loving relationships. Naniniwala ba kayo? Vulnerability can become a strength to loving relationship. If we would like, ito naniniwala ako dito, if we would like our relationships, especially our marriages, to become stronger, we have to have that vulnerability. Yung I need to admit to my husband I'm not okay. I need to admit to my husband that what he said offended me. Yes, it can be subject to risk, but it can be a subject to triumph also. It's the same way. Isn't it that we individuals like to connect with people who are real? Would you be able to connect with me if I'm not talking real to you and I'm not also vulnerable to you? You can just read what I'm saying because you can Google all these topics that I'm saying. But actually, that realness of us coming together to discuss a topic and me somehow sharing you bits of pieces of life of what I encounter with myself, with other people. It's a way to connect with you and your way to connect with me because we both have that level of vulnerability that we are connecting with each other. Does that make sense? Did you feel that? Ako yan yung gusto kong i-declare here in Coffee Break that me, I am vulnerable to you. I may not be 100% vulnerable because of course this is very public. But somehow I know that kahit sa maliliit kong sinasabi, there are somehow hindi ko siya isulat, hindi ko siya ikikwento sa inyo kung hindi ko rin naman to pinapaniwalaan at pinagdaanan kahit na these are expert information. Does that make sense? And I hope that you see that I am real to you because it's a way for us to connect to our loving relationship. And being vulnerable, it's allowing ourselves uh, if to be vulnerable in the process. We are going to also ensure that we are enriching the relationships. Ang pinakamahirap na relasyon na kung paano siya mai-enrich, yung no room for growth. Yung bang ayaw mong sabihin kung okay ka lang. Yung bang both of you, all of you, for example, in the family are pretending that you are strong, all of you are pretending that magagaling kayo lahat. Kaya 'di ba, 'pag matataas yung pride at 'pag lahat magaling, wala ng level of vulnerability. Ayaw magpakita ng fear, ayaw magpakita ng anxiety, ayaw magpakita na may nasaktan, ayaw magpakita na may nararamdaman, na tunay naman talagang may nararamdaman. Pero if there's no vulnerability in a relationship, there's no room for growth. As somebody here said, before I was afraid to tell friends what I'm going through, but I let myself to be vulnerable. Natatakot ako sa bashing, but it helped me. Yes, marami pala support at love. Totoo yan. Naniniwala ako that being vulnerable is opening ourselves actually to healing. It's opening ourselves to support. So, when we become being vulnerable helps us first to understand. Hi, Trish. It's nice to see you. Trish is my student when she was in grade school, grades 2 and 3, and now she's a doctor. Being vulnerable, it's actually allowing yourself to understand others, and for them to understand you. So when we become vulnerable to people that we love and who matters the most, it's a way to open ourselves para magkaroon ng mas magandang pagkakaintindihan. Isn't it wonderful? The second, that vulnerability brings empathy. Yan yung critical kasi minsan because we are so digital and we are so disconnected with many things, we'll multitasking here and there, nawawala na yung empathy, hindi natin nararamdaman kung ano yung nangyayari sa iba. We can no longer feel what they have in their shoes, and because that is very critical, friends. We need to see how that we can empathize with each other. Also, vulnerability is also a way for us to forgive each other. And sometimes even to forgive ourselves. Because when we are vulnerable, minsan parang, wow, pagod na ako. I would stop focusing with my weakness. I would stop focusing na naiinis ako dito sa taon to. I would be forgiving of myself. I will not be harsh on myself and I will not be harsh on others. So, when we kahit na mismo tayo, a personal vulnerability, we can forgive the other person and we can actually forgive ourselves. Okay, when we are vulnerable, we know that we are worthy of love and belonging. Eto yan. Paano pag hindi maintindihan? Paano pag if I am vulnerable to my loved ones tapos ako pa yung nakarinig ng hindi maganda at ako pa yung naging masama? So, ibig sabihin, they are not understanding. Ibig sabihin, they lack empathy. But, and they do, if they do not give you the love and belongingness that you need, that's why you started become vulnerable. It means you know where their heart is. It's actually a measure of the kind of relationship you are in. So balik ka dun sa toxic relationship, baka toxic sila. If people fail to recognize our vulnerability and to recognize that vulnerability is critical to deepen the relationship, if they fail to do that, balik tayo dun sa lesson ng toxic relationship because they just might be so because they cannot handle vulnerability. One time I saw not one time, many times in talks that I give I give talks to companies on well-being, and I give talks also to school in well-being and parenting. So if some of you are interested for me to do that on a private sessions, I do that. That's really the work that I do. And one of the question is that what if I cannot show my staff or my team that I am weak? They might think less of me. So this is a boss declaring that she's already burned out. I cannot show my kids that I am weak kasi talagang kailangan ko maging strong for them. That is a mother trying to uphold the family and not recognizing her real emotion that is bordering on anxiety already and depression for your kids. But come to think of it, nobody will see but ourselves. So being vulnerable, no matter how weak other people may see it, it's actually a way for us to be strong, to feel love and that we belong, we are supported, and being vulnerable, when we open ourselves to vulnerability, it actually helps us to create and see new possibilities. Dito ako naniniwala. Let me just share with you, for the past month, I'm not at my best. I may be coming live to you, but I'm not at my best. I have personal concerns that really took a toll on me. Until now, I'm still getting up from it. But that is why I am seeing new possibilities. Hindi ko pinupush yung sarili ko to do things right away, but actually, it's an opportunity for me to see new things, to see life with a bigger depth, and to appreciate the things that's coming my way. And actually, that emotional vulnerability can actually bring emotional courage. 'Di ba? Kaya gusto natin ipakita na hindi tayo all made up. Hindi tayo, we don't have it figured out, because that is an opportunity for us to sum up and to have emotional courage. Can you relate with what am saying? When we have the emotional courage, we can share our feelings to those important to us. Pwede nating sabihin na natatakot ako, hindi ko alam ang gagawin ko, nalulunod ako sa emosyon ko, I am so anxious, I am really getting burnt out already with all these pandemic matters. So, this is sharing of feelings. They see also that what is our real state, what is our story, and what is significant for us. Na parang, importante sa akin matulog ngayon, pwede bang hindi ko muna gawin yung mga ibang bagay dito sa bahay, and can you take over? That's asking for help. I like saying, this is a quote that I have in my book, The Beauty of 40. We can have it all, not just all at the same time. Because if we want everything all at the same time, something's gotta give. May bibigay. Hindi natin lahat kaya. We're not superwoman. So we're not superman. So friends, wag tayong magpanggap. Kasi minsan pa sa pagpapanggap, babaksak ka na. Babaksak na tayo at mas malaki yung singil sa atin, sa ating physical health, sa ating emotional health, sa ating mental health. Mas malaki yung singil if we don't admit, we don't share our feelings, and we don't accept. When we are emotional courage, is just not us sharing, but it's actually accepting the feelings and uh, validating the feelings of other people. Pag tayo ang naging vulnerable, mas madali natin mapakinggan, mas madali natin makita kung ano yung plight at nararamdaman ng iba. Mas madali tayong maging sensitive sa mga pinagdadaanan din ng mga mahal natin sa buhay. Am I making sense, friends? Vulnerability is actually very important. Thanks to Dr. Brene Brown for declaring it to the world. It's all in her book, Daring Greatly. Hindi ko mahanap sa local bookstore. I know it's available abroad, but sa local bookstore, wala, out of stock ang Daring Greatly book. But with the bits and pieces of my readings that I do, it's really very critical in loving relationships to have that degree of emotional vulnerability. Friends, at the level that you are, have you been emotionally vulnerable? Sagutin niyo ako ha. At the rate of 1 to 10, how vulnerable are you to your close relationship? Think of the three most loving relationships that you have. How vulnerable you are to them at the scale of 1 to 10. Kaya mo bang aminin yung totoong ikaw, yung totoong nararamdaman mo? Kaya mo bang sabihin na I need help? Kaya mo bang ipakita sa kanila na ito yung pinagdadaanan ko, hindi ko kaya for now, pero I would ask for your prayers and I would ask for your love. Friends, tell me what your vulnerability state is. At the scale of 1 to 10, you can put that in the comment. Ayan, husband 9. Ako rin, husband 9 or 10. Kahit na super sakit, yes. Kasi kailangan natin pagdaanan yan, friends. There will be no deeper connection in relationship if there's no vulnerability. So if we see emotional vulnerability can actually be a tool for us to connect with ourselves, to connect with to connect with our loved ones, with our spouses, and actually, emotional vulnerability as it's a way to connect with the Lord. Ito yung, Lord, I am stepping aside kasi hindi ko po kaya lahat, pero I would like you to take over. Kasi alam ko, mas kaya mo. Di ba? Thank you, friends, for telling me your level of emotional vulnerability. And I hope that you picked up something today. There will be, I would like to invite you to that mindset that vulnerability is not a weakness. It can actually be our innermost strength to be vulnerable to the people that we love, to the people important to us. On Thursday, I would talk about how can we be vulnerable and why it matters in loving relationship. So I would like also to invite you friends as I end to this workshop that I'm going to have. It's Martha's Pause sa September ba to? Body and Being workshop. It's a workshop that I do. It's going to be on September 18, but we are on early bird rate until August 15. So if you are interested, please friends, check this out. It's here at my Facebook page. You can check this out and register at this link that I'm flashing on the screen. And importantly, share this to your family and friends. Share this live stream to your family and friends. Follow me also in Spotify and of course in YouTube. You may just subscribe to these episodes in YouTube also, so I can be we can bless the people in YouTube. And more importantly, if you are blessed with this topic, if you are more vulnerable than I am, you can also share with me your blessings by sending digital gifts that are stars. You can just check the comment section by sending stars by your that is your show of support to the work that I do here at Coffee Break. And I hope that you learned a lot today. If what you learned has blessed you, can you put what you learned? What is your takeaway for today? How can you be more vulnerable? Ang tanong ko sa inyo, where do you need to be more vulnerable? Ano yung dapat mong aminin sa iba? Aminin mo na sa sarili mo. Aminin mo na rin sa akin, friend. Kasi I would like to see your level of vulnerability. I would like you to check, where do I need to work on? What do you need to work on in order for you to be more vulnerable? And if there's a takeaway that you have today, please put it here at the comment section. Thank you to all those friends who sent stars. Thank you to Mara. Thank you to Angie. Thank you also to Vance and Ives. Maraming salamat for supporting the work that I do here at Coffee Break. Sana hindi kayo magsawa to have these real conversations with me, to support me through your digital gifts, and of course, to share this with the people that you love, because we all have a role to support each other in having the best of our family life, well-being, and our faith. I hope that you join me again on Thursday. Thank you for joining me again today. Please do join me on Thursday as we continue our topic in being vulnerable. This is Dr. Michelle Alignay. Magandang araw, magandang buhay sa inyo lahat.